Alabama and Oklahoma. And listen, guys, we look at this matchup and perhaps we don't think much about it because Oklahoma is not what we expected them to be this season, and Alabama being ranked at number 7, all but has to win out in the regular season to secure their spot in the SEC championship game. There's not, a lot of people aren't really talking about this game, but the reason I want to talk about this game is because of what it could possibly represent moving forward into, like I said, the SEC championship game. Because if Alabama wins out and Texas A&M loses to Texas, then, if I'm not mistaken, one of you guys can correct me on this, but Alabama will be in the SEC championship game. And but however, our co-host Dre is obviously an Alabama fan as well. But no, seriously though, guys, what would the college football playoff committee do with a 3-loss SEC team that made it to the SEC championship game? 30-point victory. So let's look at all the teams that have 2 losses in the SEC. So we got Texas A&M. We'll leave out Texas A&M, but we'll say Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, and Ole Miss. I'm talking about teams that realistically have a chance of making the college football playoff with 2 losses from the SEC. Let's do Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. Any of those 3 teams, if they make it to the SEC championship game and they lose to Texas, what will the committee do with the 3-loss SEC team? I'm very interested to see that outcome or that possible outcome, because we have seen that the committee tends to have an understanding, or they take into account how you lose and who you lose to, like we talked about in the previous segment. And will they punish an SEC team for making their conference championship game and losing? I'm very interested to see that, because right now, like I said, they have Alabama at number 7, and like they have Georgia at number 10, and Tennessee, like I said, is that first team out. So I don't know if there's much wiggle room for these SEC teams to lose. And Lane Kiffin said something pretty interesting over the weekend, and he said that a lot of SEC teams and coaches, they don't want to make the SEC championship game because he feels that it'll hurt their chances to make the college football playoff. And I'm very surprised that no one is talking about that statement and the validity of it, because in being objective, I think it would be very difficult for a Georgia, a Tennessee, or an Alabama to make it to the SEC championship game, to lose, and to still get into the college football playoff. And I'm open to hearing your guys' perspective and what you guys think could happen, or a way where a 3-loss SEC team could still get in. But I find it very difficult to see a 3-loss SEC team. What I could see happening is, for example, we have Alabama right now, number 7, and they make the SEC championship game, and they lose. They lose to Texas. I could very well see Georgia leapfrogging Alabama, or even Tennessee, just throwing out, or I could see Georgia leapfrogging Alabama and taking that 2-loss, 3-loss SEC team, that spot from Alabama, and Alabama possibly dropping out. But Texas is obviously a top 10 team, and so do you punish Alabama, or a 2-loss SEC team, for losing to a top 10 team in the SEC championship game? And that is what the committee is going to really have to figure out, and that's the question that they're going to have to answer, because that is a very real possibility that could happen. And once again, this is why like going back to the eye test and what your strength of record says about you, and who do you think will win in these quote unquote hypothetical matchups? But it's really just an eye test and looking at the film. Because the reason I say that is because if we look at, like I said, definitely a Georgia and a Tennessee, excuse me, and Alabama's, I'm quite certain that all of us are on the same page in saying that those three teams, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, are all better than Notre Dame. They're all better than Indiana. They're all better than BYU or SMU or even a Penn State. I'm just thinking about at-large teams. I'm talking about the conference champions, or potential conference champions. So, at some point, the eye test has to come to account, and we have to get the best teams into the college football playoff. But this is what happens when you get these super conferences. They just beat up on each other, and we talked about this before the season even started. We talked about how whoever comes out of the SEC is going to be battered and bruised, and is going to have a very small chance of winning the championship because they ran the gauntlet. And it's going to be like that for Texas. It's going to be like that for Tennessee. It's going to be like that for Georgia. It's going to be like that for Alabama. It's going to be like that for Ole Miss. Whoever comes out of the SEC, they're going to be battered and bruised because they have played the best teams in the country already. And I do believe at some point in time, what's going to end up happening is that the Big Ten and SEC are just going to form their own league. They're just going to say, all right, screw it. We're just going to form our own super league, our own sort of alignment, and we'll just have our own playoff. That's what's going to come down to. We got to remember, guys, earlier in the year, the commission for the Big Ten and the SEC actually got together and had a meeting to discuss that possible outcome or that possibility. So I think that's where this is going. And, it's unfortunate because you really hurt the chances of teams that are legitimately some of the best in the country of making the playoff, because that the conference that they're in are just so dominant. There's just so much talent. But anyways, I have Alabama winning this game by a score of 37-14. I don't think this game is going to be particularly close. Oklahoma's just looking for the season to end. Obviously, they've had a tough transition to the SEC. But all hope is not lost for Oklahoma. I do think they have a lot of pieces, young pieces, especially moving forward for next season. I don't think this game will be particularly close, though. But, like I said, it can have major implications on the SEC championship game, which in turn can have major implications on the college football playoff. So, guys, be sure to just think about that. Consider that moving forward. Will a 3-loss SEC team have a possibility of making the college football playoff? And what that means for the college football playoff. Leave your thoughts in the comment section, guys. Let me know what you guys think. I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. And, guys, in our last segment, we are going to be previewing the Heisman watch list. Who I have at number 1 may surprise some of you. So be sure to stick around for that, guys. You're not going to miss it. We'll be right back.